The Infinite Tabs podcast is brought to you by The Joy Revival, a community created to inspire you to choose joy.
Each week, we will bring you real, raw, and uncut episodes that tackle some of life's most challenging circumstances.
We might cry, we for sure will laugh, and we push the envelope just a little bit.
But we will always bring it back to Jesus and the hope and the joy that only He can restore in our lives.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infinite Tabs podcast. I am Megan Sanchez.
And I'm Stacy Filipkowski.
So today we want to elaborate a little bit more based on the feedback from our last episode, which we were talking about parenting. And the question that we are kind of going to address is how do we let our kids be the light in the darkness or protect them at all costs? We're going to do this. We're going to meet this head on by using the Bible heavily because we don't want to just dish out our strong opinions. You know, we have those, but we need God's help for this one.
Yes, we do. And so we're kind of like Megan said, we're elaborating. We got some feedback from some of our listeners. And so we just wanted to we thought, you know what, this is important. And we said that we were going to tackle this more than once. And so with the feedback, we thought we're going to just continue this conversation because I think there's a lot that needs to be said. So I want to start by talking about something like, all right, let me first back up. We have, as Christians, we are taught that we need to be the light in the darkness. We are told that we are the salt and the light, and that we are to go out into the world and find and recruit and, find disciples basically, and be that light where there might not be light, so to speak, going into the lion's den. That's what it feels like when I go on TikTok most days, is I'm just entering the lion's den to get the message out, and I quickly leave. I don't stay there because it's toxic. So I think, it's kind of like that same saying that we've talked about before, where love thy neighbor, love thy neighbor. Well, it gets watered down after a while because people that aren't even Christian use that saying towards Christians, right? And so we get these little sayings, these little nuggets out of the Bible without really covering any of the context of it. And so I think that's what we're going to do today. And so when we talk about putting our kids in public school, we kind of went through this last week where we say we know that people are in different situations and some might not have the means, but there are other options of sending our children into the lion's den every single day. And
I just want to interject.
Yes.
If you feel strongly enough about anything in this life, you will make it happen.
Amen.
Some of you may not want to hear that because given your set of circumstances, maybe there is a part of you that does feel actually like, I do want to homeschool my child, and you have a job or whatever. And we recognize that there are some of you that are in those positions. But I just want to reiterate, if you want something bad enough, you will figure out a way to make it happen. Sorry to cut you off. Just had to throw that out there.
Hey, no worries. So let's talk a little bit about, so let's say you are in a situation where you have to send your child to public school, and you are taking on that thought process of, well, my child's going to be the light in the darkness, and I'm going to send them to school and arm them with the truth, and they can maybe, stand up and be a force to be reckoned with. While I agree with all of that, I also disagree with it. And so we're going to talk a little bit why, and we're going to biblically back this up. So let's take, for instance, you enlist yourself into the army, right? And you are like, okay, they say, show up at 10 a.m. for your orientation. We're going to go through what this is going to look like. And so you go to orientation, and they give you kind of an overview of what to expect, what's coming, what your schedule is going to be like, core beliefs, all these things. And then after orientation is done, they say, okay, actually, you're going out to battle right now. So here's your gun, here's your all your weapons.
Luck.
Good luck. We've given you the orientation. You should be armed with enough truth to get yourself through this battle. It's not really how that works, right?
No.
So we have to prepare for the battle. There's training, there's knowledge, there's all sorts of different things that go into being completely armed and ready for battle. There's a growth process that must take place. So when we're talking about kids who can't and aren't in most cases even allowed to pick what's for dinner or their bedtime or whether they brush their teeth or not, and we're asking them to go to battle against kids that are allowed to pick their own genders, this is not an even match, friends. And it's not just what the schools are teaching, it's what they're surrounded by. And so we want to talk more about that. I mean, it's bad enough what they're being spoon-fed in the public school, but it's also what they are surrounded by and what that means for our, precious children. So the kind of friends you keep affects your relationship with God. Would you agree with that, Megan?
100%.
Okay.
I mean, just to throw this out there, when you talk about your friendships, so as an adult, like you think, okay, who are the people that I spend the most time with around? So for some of you, you have jobs, so you are around the people that you work with. If you're married, you're around your spouse, at least for a decent amount of the time, like if they go to work or whatever. But who do you talk to on a daily basis? Who are the people that are pouring into you? I had kind of taken a break from social media and I'm sort of coming back on a little bit, but I really needed to kind of walk away from it because being the people that you want to surround yourself with, you want them bringing life into you. So I think about the people that I talk to the majority of the time, you being one of them. You want people that are going to pour hope and life and joy into you and not just suck the energy. Yes, it's okay to like have your moments, of course, but you don't want to be around people that are lying. And when I say lying, I'm not just saying like a blatant lie, but like telling you things that the world is telling. That's not somebody that you want to spend a significant amount of your time with.
Yeah, true. And so when we say this, we also are not saying like you shouldn't ever have a friend that doesn't believe. Of course
Totally.
not. But what we're saying is the people that you really are spending the most time with, they really can have an impact. And that's because your close friends have a massive influence on your life. And the Bible actually says this. So in Proverbs 13:20, it says, whoever walks with the wise become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. And the Bible encourages us to stick with good friends that will always be on our side. And then again in Proverbs 12:26, it says the righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. And that's a really important one to remember because those that are, public government school.
We're going to get into that in just a little bit.
Wicked.
So if we're going back to the whole premise of this conversation, talking about specifically like being a light in the darkness and sending your kids out into the world and what that looks like. So I don't even know where to start. And this episode, we're going to feel a lot of things because you messaged me this morning and you were pretty heated over the mess of our world and how our children are being affected. And we're going to keep this PG, but I can tell you right now, I would like to say some not PG things. But I do have some stories that I'm going to be sharing, and some of them are a little bit more emotional, but I do want to talk about my dad. I feel like I talk about my dad a decent amount on the podcast.
We should have him on as a person of interest to come on here as a guest.
I think we should.
That would be so fun.
It would be really fun.
Maybe Sveti and Masha will be the ones to interview him.
Oh, I think he would look at us like, what is happening here? If you know my dad, he's very like stoic. So he would be like, I not know what to do. Anyway, okay. So my dad, when I was in public school, I don't shy away from my age. I'm 38 years old. I was a 90s kid. And so
young, so
I,
young, so young.
just a little bit younger. So dad and mom would have these discussions about, I'm the oldest of four kids. So they would talk about like what they wanted for us in our school, in our education, excuse me. So one of the things that mom had kind of reached this point where she was like, I want to take the kids out. I want to either homeschool them or figure out how we can afford private Christian school. By the way, I was a pastor's kid. We had no money. So going to private Christian school would have taken like a lot of prayers.
I have small break. Would you like some nuts? Because I have lots of them.
Oh my. Why you have so many nuts?
No, they're in why I go back to talking like Sveti? They have own show now. You haven't seen it. You have to go. It's on YouTube. Sorry. I know I'm interrupting, but this is a heavy subject. So just trying to lighten
we gotta break it up. Yeah.
Everybody loves nuts. Okay.
Oh my. So
continue.
So anyway, my parents had kind of they talked about what they wanted for us. Mom wanted to pull us out of the public school system and homeschool or send us to private Christian school. And dad was adamant about keeping us in public school. And he said back in the 90s, he's like, what happens if you take all of the light out of the darkness? Then there's nothing left.
Yeah.
And I would argue, like, there were days where I felt like I was going to battle in the 90s, like against like the Prince of Darkness. I was very open with my faith from the time that I was a little girl. And when I was in sixth grade, I had like Bible verses like written on my backpack straps and like my binder. And I wasn't afraid to talk about the fact that I love Jesus. I was teased for that. Of course, you know, kids are mean in middle school, especially. But I had accepted, well, this is my life. And there's so many other stories that I could share with you, but I want to just explain that my dad, who felt very strongly about this argument that we are actually trying to go back, like combat, he has since changed his opinion. And he actually, there's a text chat of the six of us Elliots, and he had sent this message to us a little while ago. He and my mom are looking to be moving out of the San Jose Bay Area, Silicon Valley area. And in the process of moving, they're looking for land. And so my dad is a dreamer. I am a lot like my dad in a lot of ways. I have a lot of my mom in me too, but I think like my dad. And so he has been dreaming what he wants.
You know, that makes me think that our dads would get along because I think like my dad. And since we are pretty much the same person. It'd be interesting to get our dads together. We should have them together on the show.
I've met your dad and they would absolutely get along.
Oh,
they are very similar. Anyway, so dad has just been dreaming up what the future is going to look like. And in the text message that he sent to us, there was a portion where he said, watching the demise of our educators and system, I have another new idea to build a school. And as he is talking about this and like what he wants it to look like, this is not just some like little thing. He's dreaming big. This is, I mean, you wonder where I get it from. Like, it's my dad. Like, sometimes I dream big and he definitely dreams big. And I have seen the Lord work in incredible ways in the dreams that my dad has had. So all that to say that this coming from the talking about taking the light out of the darkness and how, oh, we shouldn't do that, and how my dad argued for years to keep us in the public school system, now has grandchildren and is seeing what is happening in the public school system. And he is like, get them out. Because they're babies. And like you talked about with a soldier, I mean, let's be real. Our how do I say this nicely? in America in 2022, our military is the weakest it's ever been. And I can say this because my husband was just with one of the kids he used to coach who is in the Army. And he said, it's pathetic, coach. He's like, guys can't even do push-ups. And it's just not, there's just not like a requirement. I mean, it's just sad. I believe that we are purposefully trying to be weakened. I would have argued that America was the greatest nation that has ever existed. And I feel like we are just getting dumped into the crapper. But that's the enemy's plan and whatever, lest I digress. All that to say, we are in 2022 and
it is different.
Stacy is a parent. I am a parent. And we have to make the best decision for our kids. And I believe that pulling them from the public education system and even some, like I said, some private Christian schools,
they're not really careful. Yeah.
They're not immune from the private Christian schools as well.
Well, okay. So there's a saying that bad company corrupts good character, right? So that quote is actually drawn from the first letter Paul wrote to the Christians in Corinthians. In 1 Corinthians 15, I believe, 33 and 34. This is what Paul says. He says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. Come back to your senses as you ought and stop sinning, for there are some who are ignorant of God. And I say this to your shame. So Paul is reminding the Christians at Corinthians that they must associate with the truth of God's word.
Isn't it Corinth?
Yeah. I thought when I was saying it was, but it's written Corinthians in this particular.
Yeah, I get. Yeah.
But I think you're right.
Church of Corinth. Keep going.
So that evil communications unquestionably affect our actions, reasonings, behaviors, and faith in Jesus. So reading that again, that evil communications unquestionably affect our actions, reasoning, behaviors, and faith in Jesus. Now, why is that important? So we're gonna spit out some actual facts and statistics here. We didn't make this up. This is what it is. But I wanted to read, or actually, I'm gonna have you read this about the academic.
Okay.
I don't do good with words. There are lots of big ones here. I might really mess up.
Okay. Well, you were doing a little bit of digging and you found this like really great bit of information. So we were like, okay, it's a little heavy, but we're gonna talk about it. So we're gonna read you some of this, and then we're gonna kind of elaborate a little more. So this says no academic skepticism, no secularist authors, no blatant materialism can so undermine the spiritual life of the country like the completely secularized training of the child under the authority of the state. Bible-based education is mandatory for Christian parents. If we think we can keep our children in a secular school system and escape the dumbed down, amoral, and immoral results of secular humanism in schools, we are sorely mistaken.
Now you see why I could not read that. Good job. So if you need to, you can rewind and listen to that again, but there is straight truth in that. And so we want to go through some other important things to consider. So one is America's schools are among the worst in the industrialized world. So one of the issues that many Christians seem basically willing to ignore is the fact that sending children to American schools represents extremely poor stewardship. Now that was I went, ouch. American students continually rank at the bottom in math, science, and reading compared to other industrialized countries. So America's schools are morally repugnant. The headlines speak for themselves. Student-teacher sex scandals, student-to-student sex scandals, immodesty, foul language, drugs, alcohol, radical homosexual agendas, teachers taking students for abortions, sextings leading to suicide, we just heard about a suicide. Megan had a really sad story yesterday. Sexually transmitted diseases, brutal beatings, school shootings. And these are just some of the headlines that have become basically normal at this
I was just going to say, this is like the norm. Like,
Yeah.
this is what you hear on a regular basis, all of this. Like, this
Right.
doesn't even go into the fact that it's not even including things like cheating, disrespect for authority, how you behave towards the opposite sex, and other moral behaviors that children learn regularly and repeat them in schools. It
So terrible. When you break it down like this and you actually start to think about it, it's kind of a lot.
Well, you're talking about, I started to say this, and then this is how our brains work, but you were talking about the soldier, right? Like, if you are readying a soldier, and like I said, in today's America, it's anyway, but if you're preparing a soldier to go into battle, you want them to be fully equipped. And you're going to send them out with all the things. Like, they're not just going to, go to basic training and then, oh, that's it. Now go fight people and, whatever. But with our children, we are willing to put them into these systems that are run by the state. If you have not done research on the educational system to understand where it actually comes from, the design of school, the educational system was designed to create good little soldiers that regurgitate information that they are told and that do exactly what they are being told and how they should think. The critical thinking is not something that's actually genuinely encouraged in most forums. And I'm going to, I won't use names or anything like that, but I will say that we know somebody who just graduated from Stanford University, which is an extraordinarily liberal college with a very disgusting agenda, like many others out there. And this young man that just graduated, he told us, like, he loves the Lord. He's a Christian. He has a lot of conservative values, and he would be assigned these papers that he would write. And he said, I don't believe a single word that I just wrote. And we're like, what? He goes, no. He's like, he said, if I don't give the teacher exactly what the teacher wants, then he's going to give me a bad grade. So I have to write based on what the teacher wants to hear. That's what I mean by they are just regurgitating this information that they are constantly being spoon-fed. And it starts from early on at the elementary level. It is not normal. It is not normal. Parents, listen to me. It is not normal for a child to sit in a classroom for hours on end to be told what to do, how to think, what to write, and how to present it. That's not normal. That's not in our natural way to want to function and operate. I know some teacher friends, and they are wonderful teachers. And in fact, they go against what is normal. And they will have the children stand up. They have them move around. They've asked for standing desks in the classroom so that the kids can kind of dance at their desks while they're doing their work. But it's not normal to just sit there, take in a bunch of information, and then be told, okay, now you need to like write down all of these things, like, and be a good little soldier, do what you're told. Not normal.
No, it's not. And I don't know why we would ever think that is. I mean, if you're a parent, you try to get your kids to do anything for any length of time, you would know that this is definitely not how they learn.
Yeah.
So we all know that God is not allowed in our educational system. So with that being said, wouldn't you say that the educational system gruesomely insults our God and our Christ?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Because how then do you expect to build anything positively Christian upon a foundation, which is
completely
there's no Christianity.
Completely negates it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to read you this. And it says, government education is anti-Christian. We all know that. That is not, you should not be surprised if you're listening to this. But here's the thing. Jesus made it quite clear when he said, whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters. And he says that in Matthew 12:30. So I'm amazed at how many Christians refuse to acknowledge this fact as it relates to the government school system. So our education is either based on biblical truth or some other alleged truth. And we've been through the truth thing. My truth, your truth. No, there's only one truth.
There's only one.
So there's no such thing as a neutrality in this regard. All education is religious in nature. And since it's illegal for students in our government schools to be taught from a Christian perspective, then it follows that they must be taught from a non or anti-Christian, anti-Christ perspective. Oh man,
that's a lot. Let's unpack a few.
Everybody
of these
take
things.
a drink of your coffee and chill out. Okay.
Deep breaths.
Deep.
So, okay.
I think there might be vodka in here. No, there needs to be.
Needs to be. So we know that Jesus has been taken out of the schools. And in a lot of ways, when you are trying to get Jesus back into the schools, so like, for example, when I was in high school, my parents worked for the sports ministry of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. We had to go through a process to present this as a club to be welcomed onto campus. And so it was allowed, like they allowed us to like have a club that we were able to meet at lunchtime. And I think we did that, I want to say once a week. And you could have all these different clubs, right? Like think about your Spanish club and your French club and your Interact club and your whatever else. This, like I said, graduated in 2002. So during that late 90s, early 2000s was when the LGB, because that's what it was called at the time. Now it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Like, furries. Yeah. So
I think it ends with furries.
Yeah. The LGB Club was introduced on our campus at that time. Now, this is a whole other podcast. We will not get into all of this right now. But what you have to understand is that the goal of the enemy is he doesn't just the things that are happening right now are happening because we allowed this stuff to happen. Like in the past, these little seeds that got planted. So allowing kids to believe that they were born of a homosexual nature, that's a lie. And I know this is going to like ruffle some feathers, but listen, I want you to understand you are still loved if you have homosexual thoughts, because we all are sinners. We all sin. We all think different things. And as much as we might be trying to align our minds and our hearts with what God wants, Satan will do whatever he can to try to come in and have you think these things. So it's like anything. If you think something, it doesn't mean you have to act on it. It doesn't mean that you are this like horrible person for thinking something. It means that you're human and that the enemy will try to distract you or point you to something else.
I mean, so, you know how many dreams I've had of me strangling my mother-in-law? I definitely didn't really act on it, but just in dream. And that is true story.
Sorry.
Oh, that is a whole nother podcast.
That's apparently we have one podcast and we've already come up with multiple more that we'll be talking about. So my friends, there's no strangling allowed also. Yes. We've all thought these things. So going back to LGB Club, that was the beginning. Like, and it started even before that. But for me, in my generation, that's what I was being faced with at that time. And now here we are allowing kids to pee in litter boxes in the bathroom. Right. So we cannot go along with the delusion of what society is saying. If you want to believe this, if this is your truth, well, no, like the Bible is very clear that God says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come to the Father except through me. So you can believe whatever you want to believe. It does not make it truth. And that's not an offensive statement. If you're offended, go open your Bible. Like you need to like talk to the Lord about this.
But I want you to get to this next actual statistic / truth, which is...
you want me to read it?
Yeah, I'm going to let you read that part and then I'll elaborate a little bit.
Okay. So talking about the results, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're...
This was a mind blower for me.
Okay. Here we go. So the result of non-Christian education is anti-Christian education. Government schools must be anti-Christian. They can be nothing else. Therefore, to send a child to a government school to have them trained is an anti-Christian environment for 14,000 instructional hours. Oh to get that much instruction from church, a child would have to attend 2 hours a week for 140 years. Did you catch all that? So 14,000 instructional hours in an anti-Christian environment. And we think that, let's take them to church once a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What did I say last week? It's not enough.
No, it's not enough. And it's also, and I go back to, it's also not the church's job to be doing all the work. So right now, if you are putting your kid in an educational system, you have released your child to that system. Yep. So you cannot be upset when they come home and think that they're a cat.
Yeah.
Because they have friends that are identifying as cats or they, them, or
whatever.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it is. Like, well, they're going to believe these things if that's what they're being surrounded with. Even if you are trying to pour that foundational truth into them, they are getting this at every single turn right now.
It's not balanced. So your balance needs to be stronger on the Christian core values than it is the worldview matters. And so if you spent 14,000 hours developing a skill, do you think you would master it?
Absolutely.
Of course. So would you then be able to teach others that skill too? More than likely.
Yeah.
So the same is true of a worldview. A child will spend 14,000 hours in school where he or she will develop a worldview. So while the child may be exposed to the principles of the Bible through home and church, like we just said, a child will only spend on average just 1,300 hours over his school year in church if they are regularly attending. If. So compare that with being educated in a secular setting for 14,000 hours. So now we have to ask the question, which we asked from the very beginning, what's the parent's role in educating their children? So I'm going to read you this. It says, while many parents cite the Bible verses that command Christians to be the salt and the light, parents' excuse me, how do I get that inflection right?
Parents' primary role.
Thank you. To raise their children to be followers of Jesus Christ. 2, the Bible clearly instructs parents on the proper education of children. In Deuteronomy 6, it says these words, which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise up. It should then give pause to Christian families to hand over the education of their children to the state. Like, well, okay. So when I read that, I was like, when you put it in numbers and you see it as plain as day, there is no way that you are arming your child enough to enter into the cesspool that is our school system, which, what did I call it the other day? It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. It's
Sodom and
literally
Gomorrah.
like sending your child into Sodom and Gomorrah and say, good luck. Be the salt, honey, be the light. You can do it. Yay.
Look, there's countless stories. Like I know I have stories from, I've shared them with you, Stace, like from my childhood in which I felt like the Lord strategically used me in my faith to be able to witness witness to people in my school setting. And by the grace of God, like I was able to bring people to know the Lord in my middle and high school days. However, what I want to get at is there's always an exception to everything. But the rule right now that stands is that the public education system is anti-Christian. It's anti-God. Its goal is not to pour the truth of the Bible into your child. Its goal is to twist their brains and allow them to, like I said, with our friend that attended Stanford, just regurgitate the information to what they want you to believe. Mm-hmm. If you hear something, we talked about this how many podcasts ago, if you hear something over and over and over again, you will start to believe it. We have a friend that actually like aligns with us in our way of thinking on so many different things, and had an experience where he talks about like how the masks, like they didn't work. And we know this, you guys have heard us talk about this, but he had his sister-in-law like came into his home and she had been sick. And he said, and she had the audacity not to wear a mask. And I'm like, time out. You already know that the masks don't work. You literally just said it. But that's just it. When you hear it over and over and over again, you start to subconsciously believe the garbage that is being filled into your head. So if you have a child that is sitting in a classroom 6 hours a day, 5 hours a week, and they're being told all this stuff that is not true, and then they come home and mom and dad are trying to remedy this, and they're not going to remedy everything. Like, right. It's like, well, you talk about different things. Like you're not just talking about everything that took place like in that 6 hours. So okay, hang on. Let me take a deep breath for just a second. We do have more statistics that we want to share with you. And I don't want this episode to go too long to where you are like, okay, wrap it up, girls. Yeah. So I want to share a couple more statistics with you, and then we'll try to close this out in the next little bit here. So Christian parents that send their children to public school believing that the curriculum is neutral, if the education system forbids even a mention of God, isn't such secularism, as Rabbi Zacharias said, you said Rabbi.
Ravi.
Ravi?
I don't know. This is the guy that wrote it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The guy that wrote this. Yeah, yes. He wrote this. Yep, with the statistics in it.
With this. Okay, so sorry about that. Didn't mean to confuse you. So let me say that again. That if the education system forbids even a mention of God, isn't such secularism just an illusion of neutrality? So still, so many like well-meaning Christian parents attend church on Sunday with their children. I mean, like that's something that we try to do like almost every Sunday. It doesn't always happen, but anyway, all that to say, we're doing the best that we can, but you attend church with your child and they might participate in youth group or Awana, and you assume that this will be enough. But church is of paramount importance in the life of a Christian. And the statistics don't play out, and young people are leaving the church in droves as they enter their 20s. So
I heard, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I heard that, I mean, I know we're all about revival, right? Like, obviously, that's our whole thing but the percentage of people leaving the Christian faith is higher than it has ever been.
Yeah.
Ever.
So if you start using your critical thinking skills. I know it's a lost art right now, but like just stop and think for a minute and ask yourself why. Why are people leaving the church? Well, I can tell you, if you're once again going back to being fed all these lies over and over, and if the world is telling you, live your truth, like what makes you happy? Well, happiness is an emotion. Like that changes every 5 seconds. You can't live your truth, because if you want to believe that you're a cat, I'm not going to fall into that delusion with you, because that's not the truth.
Yeah.
And if you, I mean, that's a whole other, you could have a discussion on truth in and of itself.
Yeah. There's a book called Already Gone, and the authors actually reveal research that indicates more than 60% of people in their 20s who were churched as teens, but they attended a public school.
Yeah.
They are now disengaged from the church.
Yeah.
And so with so many Christians raising their children in the public school, is it possible that the public school is actually, because you just said this a minute ago, is it an illusion of neutrality? I believe it is. And
totally.
So how can it not be, when you can't even mention, I mean, some people can't even say the word God in the what's that called? Not the
Pledge of
anthem.
Allegiance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
See, it's so far removed, I can't even remember the name of it.
Well, I mean, I'm seeing like on social media, like there are schools that offer the Pledge of Allegiance as an option, and you'll get like maybe a quarter of the students will stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance now. And I just saw a video yesterday that I think it might have been Rogan O'Hanley, DC Drano, if you follow him on social, but I think it was him that he shared like this video.
I think I saw it. Just 3 people standing. Maybe?
Yeah. It was just, like less than 5, whatever it was, saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Kids just, phones out, like not paying attention. And I'm just like, I shouldn't be shocked. I shouldn't like, but I think too, like we pulled our kids from a private Christian education. Keep that in mind, friends. We took our kids out of a private Christian education because we didn't believe with the direction that the school was heading in how they were handling things during the COVID drama of the world. And I look back at that and go, praise the Lord. Thank you, Lord, because it actually was the best thing that we could have done for our children. But when we took them out of that setting, and we have had the opportunity to pour more Jesus into them and teach them things that we feel are actually important. You and I, Stace, have talked about the useless information that was taught to us when we were in the school system that we don't use. And so we've been having these discussions, right? Like as friends and as moms and wives, about trying to figure out what's the future going to look like for our families, and what are the things that we want to teach our children, and that's actually important, that's going to like make a difference in their life. The biggest thing that you can teach your children is the truth of what God's word has to say. When the Bible talks about hiding his word in our hearts, if you can be able to pull those Bible verses to memory, to be able to recite them, to pull them out when you are struggling, like, I've quoted my life verse at least a few times on the episode, being 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you. I just say it over and over and over again. And I go to the foot of the cross when I'm like, Lord, I have no words. I have no words, because society is crumbling. And like I just said, we pulled the kids out of private Christian school. I just said this to you yesterday. A 7th grade boy committed suicide this past Friday that attended my kids' former private Christian school. I have been hearing stories about little girls that are identifying as they, them. They are 13 years old. What the hell is happening? This is a private Christian school. Right. And I know that it starts in the home, but when you allow this stuff to continue, you have to combat that garbage. Yeah. Like if you are an educator and you are a Christian, you are absolutely obligated to tell these children the truth. Yeah. And to let them continue to believe these lies is wrong. Right. So even as I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going and then you cut me off when you need to.
I'm going to cut you off now.
Go. Going to keep talking.
I'm going to save our listener. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I think all that to say, even though we are pushing in this particular podcast, having them in a Christian private school, you still have to be careful, because just like churches today who are conforming to the worldview and don't want to step on any toes, and they're tickling the ears and they're making it easy to, all this other crap, your private schools can still function that way. So just be involved. We are blessed with the school that Austin goes to is solid. I mean, they have an entire class on how to handle he, she, they, them,
oh, that's so good.
Combating, like how so good to go into the world, into these spaces and show love, but also share truth. And it's actually called biblical defense. That's what they call it. Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Awesome. So you just have to be careful, because that sneaky little worldview can make its way even into, some of the best Christian schools. And especially now, because there's a lot of people making the shift from public to Christian. So now you got to be careful that the enemy doesn't try to get himself into there, because that's, what he does.
Well, the goal, I mean, when you go back and back and back and back, the goal is, of the enemy is ultimately to break down the family unit. So starting with husband and wife, the enemy is after marriages. I mean, like, if he can break the marriage, it messes with the kids and it breaks the child. And to be able to then get into churches, and how many pastors fall short? I mean, we're all sinners, but pastors need to be held to a different standard. And so when you hear about these pastors that are having affairs, or that they knew about help me,
sexual
things
going on.
Yeah, but what's the term? Anyway, there's,
Sorry.
I mean, but there's, you're hearing about all of these sexual accusations that are occurring in churches, and molestation of children. It's disgusting, but that's the goal of the enemy. And so you got to put that armor on every single day. And so you got to not only put the armor on yourself, but you got to put it on your kids, and don't send them into battle before they're ready. So I'm going to say this, take your kids out of the public school system. That's going to be harsh.
And take it to the Lord and say, God, how would you have me do this? I need you to open the right doors so that I can do this. This is the desire of my heart, is to protect your children that you gave me. So please help me find a way to do this.
These babies were God's first.
Yeah.
They were his first. So yes, you take them before him. And I wholeheartedly believe that where there's a will, there's a way. Going back to what we said at the very beginning of this. Yeah. Drew and I are sitting in a position right now trying to figure out, this too, because you're dealing with a lot of the same things, just in a different capacity. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But my husband is the sole income provider for us right now. And he has a decent paycheck, but due to inflation, with the rising costs of gas and groceries, that alone is crippling us. And we are dipping into savings every single month. And this is happening with families across the entire country, and really the world. It's affecting everybody. And so being in the position that we're in, and trying to trust the Lord, because so many days we have this conversation that goes around in circles. And we just had it the other day, to where he's like, what are we going to do? Financially, is there like something that you can find a job or something like that? And so this is what we do. We talk about it, and then we come back to the same place. I can't go out and get a job because that means giving my children over to the state. And I will not. We will not do that. He says the same thing. He goes, nope, you're right. The other day he did it. He was just like, no, I guess you can't.
No.
Those babies are the most important thing. They are your mission field. Mm-hmm. And as much as you are trying to tell them, like, you got this, little Johnny, you can do this, little Sally, like, go into the world and be the salt and the light and love your neighbor as your friend. What's the verse? I'm having a moment. Yes, love your neighbor as yourself.
As yourself.
Thank you.
Yourself. Yep. Yeah.
Still haven't finished the coffee. It's a little early over here.
Yeah. So I think that it's one of those things that don't shoot the messenger, right? Like, we are literally just telling you facts. We're telling you and reminding you what you probably already knew, but it's that much more important today than it ever has been. Especially where this world is going, especially where this country is moving. We do need to be raising dragon slayers, and we cannot do that if they are in the worldview public school of neutrality. Right?
Can't.
So you just can't. I don't care how you swing it. It's we were given biblical instruction. We just read you, I don't even know how many Bible verses. And so I would just tell you and ask you to take it to the Lord and ask him how he could show you how you can change this for your child. Like we put some resources last week, so you can look back on that episode for different ways of schooling your children. There is a public free, it says public, but I'm telling you, it is a much different curriculum. It is not the same as the public school. It's only funded by the public school. And you have control over what they're doing. You can.
That's what I was going to say. You can like oversee what is going on and what they are being taught.
Yeah. Yep. So that's all we have for you today. I know it was
a little bit heavy. But that's okay. You should go watch Very Nice Russians. That's make it not so heavy.
Yes. Oh, Pure Chaos was our first episode. Gosh. I mean, I don't know if it makes anyone else laugh, but it sure makes me laugh. And so I got to find joy where I can today, because my husband found me sitting in the garage in the dark just about 40 minutes before I hopped on here. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Nope.
Just having a mental breakdown."
Having my mental breakdown. That's where I'm at. So,
so we got to find joy where we can.
Yes. And I like in Very Nice Russian.
Very Nice Russians. It's so funny. Yesterday when Stacy and I actually watched it together, it might have been funnier like watching it back.
Right.
And getting to see each other's reactions to like what was happening on the screen, which is literally pure chaos.
Oh, you know what? I'll link it in the comments below so you can easily find your way to it, because it's only on YouTube. So that's the only place you're going to be able to see it.
I have to practice my Dobro Pazhalovit Kochin Karoshin Ruskim. I need to practice a little more. That means welcome to Very Nice Russians.
Don't give it all away. All right, my friends. Well, we love you. We do respect each and every one of your feedback. And hey, if you don't agree with us, that's okay too. We still love you. But it's something that needs to be talked about, and we will encourage moms and parents to look for alternatives in this crazy world. So just remember, through the good, the bad, and the dumpster fires,
we can still choose joy.
And Very Nice
Russians. And Very Nice Russians. I was just going to say.
I see it now. It's going to be a movie. Very Nice Russian go to Boca Raton.
Oh my. You disappeared.
Oh,
no.
I did it again. It's me.
Oh no. Where'd you go? You're gone again.
Oh no. My whole world's falling apart. I'm in the car, if anybody cares.
Oh my God.